Hello. I'm going to talk to you about this quote. One, I like it. It's very elegant, it's precise. It's about my search to find out why I like it, what the significance is, and how it related to what I've been reading about cognitive psychology for a number of decades. I started off with Alan Baddeley, and he's worked with several colleagues, but I came across something very interesting. His deliberations before he ended up with a model that we all use. He said that he wanted to acknowledge and incorporate the work of Ebbinghaus, who, you know, his work was about memorizing and recalling short digits. And he said that what Ebbinghaus taught us was the positive habits we can instill in order to be able to have a more efficient memory. At the same time, he looked at Sir Frederick Barlett, who was a psychologist back in the early 30s, I think who was about the second person after Piaget to start using the word schema, which had been taken from philosophy. And Bartlett's research was conducted somewhat a bit more informally. But he was very interested in how memory is reconstituted. It's not something comes in, you do a bit of retrieval practice, I've got it nailed and it stays there forever. As you revisit it, you always slightly change it and reshape it. And his study was based on telling people a story and asking them to retell it. But it wasn't in a clinical laboratory. He talks about how he met one of his subjects in the street one day and said, "Oh, you know that story I told you about? What can you remember of it?" So it's that informal, but he really shaped a lot of psychology. And I think it's my interpretation of what he was doing. He was interested in meaning making. Humans are meaning makers, and schemas are the mechanism by which we can make sense of the world and have shortcuts to understand. And so Baddeley's model was an attempt to look at both of those. So I'm going to look at that was the background. I'm going to look at my talk in three particular sections. And increasingly I'm thinking almost every talk needs to have the first section on attention, because there's nothing else without it. And teaching is almost about attention management. So I'm going to briefly talk about that. And I was one of those hippies in the 70s who was really turned on by the magic number 7, George Miller's work. Interestingly, only recently I found out an article he said where it was a joke. It was a serious study journal, and so he put the word magic in. And then they're very precise, he says, 7, plus or minus 2. So it kind of was a joke, and yet over decades that was actually the golden rule, until sometime maybe the turn of the century, Cowan and his colleagues said, actually, it's near a 4, so it's 4 plus or minus 1. Now, I've been criticised on Twitter for following a bit of advice I'd read. Someone said it may be useful for teachers if they're willing to go into the dangerous territory of thinking in metaphors, that these could be considered to be slots in your head. Now, I think that's safe. I don't think there's any teacher who thinks there actually are slots in their head. But as you're working in the busy world of a classroom, it may be useful to consider, if I fill all those slots up, what's going to happen? Actually, the recommendation was only really go to fill 3 of them, because you need 1 slot to process what's already in there. So we don't have a lot of it, and kind of we are prisoners. That's our biology. We're limited by that. But there are some ways to get around it. Now, I've got this little story that exemplifies how humans do that. Because if you could only have 4 bits of information at any one time, it all depends on what you mean by a bit of information. It's the bit. So if I'm at a supermarket, this is the whole metaphor, and I'm going to the checkout, but at this stage we haven't invented this fabulous technology called a plastic bag. So I pick up 1 item, 2 items, that's comfortable. 3 items, I'm nearly full. I pick up 4 items, see, I'm working memory. I go to pick a fifth one up, and I drop something. So I'm really limited. Then we invent this fabulous technology called a plastic bag. I put 4 items in one plastic bag, and that's only one bit. So I can kind of have 16 items, where previously I was struggling with 4. Because I'm able to group individual elements and put them together because they're meaningfully related, and so I relate to them as one item, one chunk. Oh, and while we talk about attention, this isn't written down, but I did catch it word for word on the video. With the attention on cognitive load theory, it can easily turn to the fact that we should be alleviating all cognitive load, which would mean very bland lessons, everyone falls asleep, nothing's learned. But it wouldn't be difficult. So the purpose is to try and minimise extraneous cognitive load. I think the term, the technical word, we have limited cognitive resources. So don't waste them on stuff that isn't related to the purpose of the lesson. Okay, so this time last year, at the speakers... No, sorry, it's the wrong slide. So, this is an image to start to look at what we mean by schema. It said that information is out there, but meaning is in here. So the schemas are our framework for how we understand the world. So this was the slide. This time last year, I had a speaker's supper, and I sat next to Christian and Casper, and I kind of bullied them. They couldn't run away. I said, I've been reading cognitive psychology for years, and I'm not sure I understand it. And I read all these words, and I have this theory in my mind that it's something like this. We talk about elements a lot, or units, little bits. And somehow or other, rather like I told you with my shopping basket, we put them together into chunks. So we chunk things up. And somewhere magically, those chunks become schema. Not quite sure how. And then somewhere along, the schemas themselves join together to frame your mental model, your view of the world, your Weltanschauung. And I got an agreement that generally, in the way that people speak about it, there is that kind of sense of progression. But the real problem comes that one person's chunk is another person's schema. So that can't be quantified. It's just a general notion of how human beings are able to organise information for easy and fluid and automatic access. So I'm going to do a little bit of work on chunking now. This comes from I haven't got the exact reference for you here, about a 1950s IQ test. And they asked the pupils to match 2 items together. Actually, I found it in first round's instrumental enrichment. Any of you ever done that? Weird thing. And the students who matched the pipe and the match together, the pipe and the match, they were deemed to have a merely functional intelligence, whereas those who put these together had a more abstract notion because they had a concept fire, whereas the other children simply saw in everyday life those two being put together. So I have a similar test of your intelligence now. You may need to speak to a partner because it's really complex. I'm going to give you 3 items, and I want you to link 2 of them. Actually, tell your partner why you think them. That's too bad. So, I see, Paul, how would you do that? Arsenal. Okay, so would it be different if I gave you more information? I haven't got a slide for it now, but I think Chi and colleagues have got something similar, rather more complex with physics students with regard to physics problems. So the novices go for the surface salient features, which some of you may not all go yet. Whereas when you have a deeper knowledge, we look at the structural differences. So how we do that is personal. And knowledge comes about when our personal views start to get some agreement. Some of these agreements are quite cultural. I don't know whether you've heard of George Lakoff. This is one of his books, and that is the actual title of the book. So, it's contentious. And where it comes from is he visited a tribe in Australia, and he found that in their language, their view of the world is shaped by their language, and their language has fundamentally 4 main categories. And one of those main categories, I don't know the actual word for it, is meaningfully represented by these items here. And that will completely shape their experience of the world. So I'm looking at element chunk, but I'm going to start gradually looking at how we organise and how we start using language. I'll look at categorisation first. So chunking could be said to be the first part of the categorisation process in organising. So we're looking at those elements that have similar attributes, and we look at classical Aristotelian logic and categorisation. But this psychologist here in the 60s, Eleanor Roche, for a number of decades, she did some experiments because she doubted that humans did categorise in that formal, logical way. And her theory was based on prototypes, and this was her example. It was, biologically, if you were taught, you'd know that all the birds are equal in their bird nests. But outside of a public domain, privately, we have this little theory that the small, chirpy, sweet ones somehow have got more bird nests than others that are a bit more lumpy and don't fly elegantly. What was interesting is that I gave this talk in England about nearly a year ago, and a really prominent primary head teacher started looking at it and wondering whether it may be an interesting way to introduce certain topics. So, for example, I guess science and the concepts in science are that end of the spectrum, but maybe some parts of English, when you're looking at English literature and perhaps looking at the Romantic period, whether they have clearly defined attributes from which we can employ set theory, or do they actually have a prototypical Romantic artist and use that around which to start categorising? Another way in which we can categorise is Engelmann's direct instruction is really clear that we should always be giving concrete examples, and equally we should be giving the non-examples. And by giving the non-examples, we start to be clear what the boundaries are in terms of development of our development categorisation. And most of those things I just talked about come naturally. We're not even aware that we do it. And so this curse of knowledge that's talked about, there's been some recent discussions on Twitter where teachers are discovering, particularly through the use of the visualizer, they can both model how they would deal with constructing an essay or answering exam questions, and they can show their development by writing, and it's displayed there. But what they also do is, and you could say that by doing that, by looking at what the hand does, you're looking downstream, the outcomes of your thinking. What they're doing now is they're linking downstream with upstream, and they're beginning to talk out and explain step by step their thinking processes. And in that way, they're addressing some of the assumptions that experts have when they're talking to novices. So let's look at this organisation. I don't know whether any of you read this book. I bought it. It's one of those £120 books. That's a lot of money. And the first half is particularly interesting. But that, I don't think I've ever read someone make such a point so pointedly, so directly. And then he goes on to this. No, sorry, I missed. Oh, sorry, yeah. Okay. There's one little experiment here where I'm not talking distinctly, but I'm talking about graphic organisers. There's a big discussion about whether teachers should create the graphic organisers and give the students the organising principles, the concepts, the categories, or whether it's better for students to own the categories, reinvent all the categories themselves. So within that particular context, here's this experiment where subjects were given some information and it was organised, and then they were tested on their recall and their comprehension. And they found that when the expert, the teacher, the experimenter provided the categories, everyone was far more successful. So the second part of what Reif says is, this is what teachers should be doing. And then he goes on to point out, he has a hierarchy of how that happens. So he said the lowest order, well actually lower than that, is a teacher continually talking. I don't know whether you've read fully Sweller's work on cognitive load theory. He has something really interesting about that's the really practical part. They're called the effects, and there's one that sounds really grand, but it happens all the time, it's happening right now. It's called the transient information effect, which is when someone speaks, the words disappear. So you have to continually listen, remember, and keep holding them up to the end of the sentence to make sense of that. Then hold that sentence and listen to the next sentence, so it builds up. So that must be the worst thing. The next thing is that as you talk, occasionally you just scribble up some of the key words. There's no organisation to it, but at least some of the words are visible and permanent as opposed to disappearing. Next is the list. I don't know whether in Holland, have you picked up the knowledge organisers that's happened in England, where you pare down to the core essentials of what a topic is? The problems that I see with knowledge organisers, and they have great advantage, if nothing else for the teacher to be really clear what the main points are, as opposed to some of the elaborations, is that they're merely lists. And although there's a level of organisation, because there's that list as opposed to this list, within them, there's no distinction, there's just a list. And one of the problems with everyone now having access to desktop publishing is that lists look very neat. But neatness doesn't mean they're organised. They're simply neat. There could be what's called a laundry basket, a laundry list. You know when you have a laundry basket at home and everything goes in socks and bras and pants and football socks? There's no, and that's often what this can do. So, next hierarchy, he calls a network. And I'm going to tell you the next one straight away because I want to compare them with a hierarchy. A network is better than a list because it's connected, but for retrieval purposes, it's less successful than a hierarchy because there are too many connections. They're all idiosyncratic. There's no overarching structure which determines the next level structure, which is exactly what you get on a hierarchy. Now, I'm going to ask you to do something now, and it is a known strategy. It's called to imagine. I'm going to talk about something, and I want you to imagine it. I don't have a slide for it. Okay, but I know you can do it. There's been a lot of nonsense, and I've been reading this nonsense since the early 70s about mind maps. People claptrap about the colours, the wavy lines, and all that nonsense. My analysis of it is that a mind map structurally is no different to a tree diagram. So, here's what I want you to imagine. Imagine that, you put that in the middle. We've got three main branches. So from the middle you draw a wiggly line, colourful if you want to, if you're a hippie. Three wiggly lines. The first one has got three subsections. The first wiggly line, you go 1, 2, 3. And then one of those has got two subsections. So can you see, we built a mind map. Tony Bizan, who invented mind maps, writes, and he gives examples of his wiggly line map, colourful and hippie, and then he shows another mind map, exactly the same, but with straight lines, and worse than that, right angles. Right angles are bad for thinking. And he says they use different parts of the brain. And hundreds of thousands of people believe that. So, but when you look at it structurally, as opposed to the surface graphic features, they're all the same. And the reason why these are more successful for retrieval is that whether you build it up, and I'll talk about this soon, top down or bottom up, it becomes sticky, unlike this, which is very sticky. So in the end, you only need, you only need to remember this, and these come free. You only need to remember this, and these comes along free. It comes along as one unit. Nested knowledge is a term I've recently come across that describes that, nested knowledge. We'll talk later on about which is the better of those two directions. I still use this. For me, this is the most practical quote in terms of the implication for teaching I've come across. Others may be more well known, but this one I find really, really useful. And I've got another story to describe what it means. It's a domestic story, it's about my wife. My wife, I have to admit, is very sexist. And she gives me roles that she thinks are in tune with my masculine qualities. So she has given me the responsibility of looking after the garage. This is a very male thing. So she says, Oliver, and our bin's in the garage. Oliver, can you put this in the garage? So I go in the garage and I find where things go. It's cold, it's dark, it's a drag, I don't like it. And I found a quicker way of doing it, and I didn't tell her. So put this away, Oliver, yes, darling. I'm in the corridor, close the door behind in the kitchen. I open the garage door and throw it in. I just throw it in. Metaphor, teaching, just deliver. Just deliver. I throw it in. It's really effective. From this point of view, it's really effective. And then my wife said to me, Oliver, can you get the... Okay. And I spent ages. I had to go in this, and I had to search and search and search, and I was unsuccessful. And then we were inspired. We saw these TV programs, you know, the makeovers. I thought, I'm going to give my garage a makeover. So I painted it, and I'm going to put some shelves up. Now, my father's an architect, and he left me some beautiful metal templates for letters. You know, like you see on the side of tea chests. So I put 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, E. I had no intention of spending any effort organising stuff, but I thought I'd persuade my wife and I'd fool her. But naturally, without any real effort, you tend to put the electrical stuff together, and then within the electrical stuff, you tend to put the fuses, and then you put the extension leads. So naturally, without you know, just like you don't put cereals in the fridge, and you don't put plates in the fridge. There's a place for everything in its place. It wasn't very complicated, it just happened. And then my wife said to me, Oliver, can you get me the fuses? Oh yeah, D7. What? D7? I just knew exactly where it was. So when we have structures and the organisational framework that contains it all together, life is incredibly easier. So what this says is, the more organised it is going in, the easier it is to get things out. That's all. Now, we know that's obvious for physical objects. It's obvious, because we do it all the time. Our lifestyle and our houses aren't a mess. But I continue to think it useful to think of thinking and the ideas that we think about as objects. So therefore, I organise these abstract objects in the same way that I would organise my physical objects. As do these two guys. Now, one of the reasons why I think that quote is interesting is that, I don't know whether it affects you in Holland, but in England there's an enormous battle between the traditionalists and the progressives, and they hate each other. Yeah. If you saw earlier on the work that Baddeley did, that slide I showed you with Baddeley, I had, my mind's gone, Ebbinghaus here. Rigorous retrieval of things. Give it, retrieve it, give it, retrieve it. And then we had Barlett with this kind of really quite looser notion of reconstituting memory because we're always trying to create meaning. My point of view, underneath what they argue about, the progressives want children to understand the world and so give them strategies where they create meaning. The traditionalists say that's really grand, but man, you can't create any meaning unless you know stuff. So let's make sure they know stuff. These two cognitive psychologists, particularly Richard Mayer, has been working in laboratories on cognitive science for decades and decades, back in the 70s and 80s. Really precise cognitive science. So these are as far away as you could get to being progressives. And yet a book they've got out called Learning as a Generative Activity is incredible because they're building on the Ebbinghaus stuff and they're looking at how you can use that in order to empower and inform the children so they can start doing some meaning making. So it's called as a generative activity. And that meaning making, when someone talks about meaning making and they're talking in more abstract terms, ask them, do you mean organising? See, from my point of view, when I hear the word meaning, I hear organisation. To me, they're not separate. The purpose of organising is to make things meaningful. And how we make things meaningful is by organising. So here, organising, this is just like the sensory part of when you get stuff in. And then with working memory, to get it into long-term memory, you need to organise it. So you see, from different aspects of different psychologies, we're getting around to organising all the time. And I want to introduce FRAP first. If any of you are into neuroscience, even though you may be mocked, why do you want to learn those long scientific terms, so what? She's a cognitive psychologist and a neuroscientist, and her blog is wonderful in creating those links. So let me just show you instead of. This is her view of how we integrate new information with existing knowledge. Because it comes in and you build it up. But I want to point out the use of the triangle, as if there's a base of knowledge. Because in essence, most of our thinking is done either deductively, and it sounds as if I'm talking about Brexit here. You're a rule taker here, you're a rule taker, because the giants before you have created the bloody rules. And teachers have learned them, and they're giving you the rules. So you get the principle, the law, the rule, and then you then discover the details, how it's organised. Inductive thinking is when, in a sense, you're working like a scientist, or there's an article I read by Paul Kirshner who said, it's not quite that simple. Scientists start here, jump down, go back up, but we're dealing with the world empirically, and then you invent. Oh, this and this and this, they go together. Let's call that, it's wonderful, but why would you want to invent it and people will do it inaccurately? But that's fundamentally what we do. And I want to move on to language now. But I'm not going to do it yet, so I'm going to give you a test. I'm going to give you a test. Now, I'm going to give you 3 words, and I'm going to present them to you horizontally. I'll say word 1, then I'll say word 2, then I'll say word 3. And I'll say it again in case you find that hard to remember. And then, when I say go, all of you in unison will chant out one of the words at the top, one of the words lower down, it's a tree diagram, and one of the words down at the bottom. Okay? Here we go. Car, mini, transport. Car, mini, transport. Top one?
Transport. Car. Mini.
Great. All our languages are like that. It's hierarchical. And if you like a bit of jargon, it's called a hyponymic hierarchy. Hyponymic hierarchy. All our languages like that, and all the teachers who are experts and know their subject have absorbed that naturally, and they don't tell their students. That hierarchy of language is the same as the tree diagrams, is how we organise the world. Let me give you an example from my phone. Although I've added this, when you have, do you know there are two organising principles when you look up words up in a dictionary? One is the alphabetical order, obviously. The other one is the hyponymic hierarchy. Every word will tell you less specific, which means more general, right up there. Then it gives you more specific. So if you look up tree, it will say a plant, more specific, more abstract, and it will tell you different types of trees, all the way down. So this is what we use all the time in our subjects. And that's the technical language if you like it. So it's the same triangle as we had in the tree diagram. That's why we missed that. So it becomes nested knowledge. You involve the children and make explicitly the organisation. You just need to remember this. And that relates to the work we started off by talking an element, a chunk, a schema, a mental model. They fit in each other as nested knowledge. Involve and make explicit the construction, organisation and the hierarchy, then this is all you need to know. It's the most effective way to remember stuff and have meaning. So they're not distinct, they come together. That's old as well. I love this quote. We say geography is not about rivers and cycles and rocks. It's the language about it. I know it's an obvious thing. So all the subject is constructed by the language. And language isn't equal. It's hierarchical. It's organised in a hierarchical way. And this hierarchy ends now. Great, thank you.